my responsibility was pre-scouts as well. So I would watch who we were playing against, come up with a pregame video and deliver it to the team that incorporated everything from their forecheck to their controlled forecheck to the way they play, offensive zone tendencies, neutral zone tendencies, neutral zone forecheck, E zone tendencies, breakouts, controlled breakouts, and faceoffs.
Yeah.
And
Mike, I don't mean to interrupt you because I know you're only on a short while. That's sort of a typical thing. We don't need the details of it because everybody that's been on has been involved in Olympic competition, national team competition, and they're aware of those roles. So you were on the ice at practice. You got to know the players well. You worked with the coaches closely. My question was, how the hell did such a new group come together so well? You lost the first 3 games. What's your take on that?
Well, we knew all we needed was a little bit of time and some breaks. I mean, most of the teams over there were there 2 weeks ahead of us, or together 2 weeks ahead of us, played 3 or 4 exhibition games, and basically we got together in Newark on a Saturday. We were quarantined, so we couldn't actually meet outside of Zoom. Got on a plane Sunday and arrived in Latvia on Monday. Had to quarantine another 48 hours, and then we got on the ice. And I think we practiced 2 or 3 times before we actually played our first game. No exhibition games. So in that time, obviously, it was an ongoing thing, and I think our focus was just getting better and getting closer every day. And we had, we were basically isolated to the hotel. We could get together in the hotel. We had a room in the hotel for the players and for the coaches, but we weren't really going anywhere outside of the hotel. It was the rink in the hotel, and so it was a matter of those guys spent a lot of time together, playing ping pong, playing cards, getting to know one another, and I think it was just time. We needed the time, and of course, losing the first 3 games, we needed some breaks along the way, and we got them.
Mike, do you know? Did your team have a sports psychologist?
We didn't. No. We didn't have a sports psychologist. We had the coaching staff and obviously a really, really strong management group, and Shane Doan, who was there from the very start, and Roberto Luongo got over there after the first round of the playoffs, and those 2 guys provided a lot of leadership. Obviously, you have a tremendous amount of respect from the players and the staff, and we're able to spend a lot of time communicating with the players as well on obviously their experiences.
Mike, all of your years of experience coaching, you've been involved in short-term competition. What else have you done for Hockey Canada? I met you at what camp was that? I met you at Winsport.
Well, I mean, I've done the under-17s twice. Obviously, both of those opportunities were with Hockey Canada, but through Hockey Alberta. So I worked with Barry Midori for both of those. I've done numerous U18 summer camps as a camp coach. I coached the Holinka 3 years ago as a head coach, and then as an assistant coach for the World Juniors last year, and assistant coach for the Men's Worlds. So lots of short-term competition. Head coach with Team Alberta at the Canada Winter Games in Prince George. So I have a lot of experience with short-term competition with Hockey Canada.
Yeah. All of those experiences, that was my first thought. Like, to me, it was unbelievable that the team came together and had that result. You didn't exactly have the pick of the litter when it comes to players, but that achievement and some of the teams you played on paper, at any rate, we're built more for success in terms of talent.
Absolutely. I think the one thing you learn over there is how good everybody is and how well they defend, how well they're coached, and yeah, we didn't have the pick of the litter, and we didn't have a lot of superstars on our team, but we did have guys that were committed to playing the right way. They understood their roles, and we worked well as blocks of five every time we got out on the ice, and I think we just got better and better and more confident as we started moving forward. There really, a lot of people ask what was the turning moment, or was there a defining moment as to when things turned? And I can't really pick one. I think one thing I remember was we were 0-3 to start. We'd lost to Germany. We deserved to win that game. We outplayed them. We outshot them. We outchanced them. We just didn't win the game. And after the game, our coach's room wasn't very far from the players' room, and we could hear a lot of noise. We weren't sure whether it was all the rooms were fairly close. We had every country in our hotel, and everybody had their own team room, and we could hear a lot of noise, and we weren't sure what room it was coming from. It was coming from our room, and it wasn't that our players, were aloof or didn't care. There just wasn't any panic, and I think our leadership group understood exactly what we needed. And what we needed was we needed that positive energy. We needed to stay on track. We knew we needed some breaks along the way we started. And if we just took care of what we could control and hopefully get those breaks, it would extend our opportunity to play a little further. And it did. And once we got into the medal round, you talk about teams that were better on paper. I mean, the Russians had 6 defensemen that were 6 bona fide NHL defensemen. And, Bobrovsky's first game since the playoffs. And, we found a way to win that hockey game. And then we just took that momentum and kept rolling.
Mike, in terms of leadership, the idea of a group of coaches working together in short-term competition, I don't know who put the staff together, but obviously you had to be on the same page. And
we did.
It seems like that really happened. But what about the internal leadership, the guys? Who were the players you would call veterans that sort of made your job easier, or were they all just bought in to short-term competition and roles that they were going to earn and play?
Well, we had a lot of younger guys. We had a really young team. In fact, I think we were probably the youngest team there. So it was really important that the veteran leadership was able to step up, and certainly in the situations where we were down and maintain that positive energy, that focus. So I look at guys like Adam Henrique. He was our captain. He'd been through it in 2019. Veteran leader in the NHL. Been with the World Juniors. Had some experience with short-term competition, and he really stepped up and took on that role. He did a really good job with the younger guys. He did a good job with the older guys. He was, to me, he was the catalyst. And surrounding him, everybody brought something a little bit different. Connor Brown and Mangiapane brought a lot of energy, a lot of confidence. Obviously those two guys were really important to our success. Troy Stetcher was unbelievable. We had another leader, Colin Miller, who broke his thumb. So he was one of our assistant captains and a top 4 defenseman, and broke his thumb, and we lost him, I think, the 3rd or 4th game into the competition, and that opened the door for Owen Power. So an 18-year-old defenseman coming in who was probably slotted in at 6 or 7, moved his way into the top 4, and played really, really well, and probably go first overall in the draft this year. But a big part of his success was playing with a guy like Troy Stetcher, who gave him the confidence and settled him down when he needed to be settled down, and allowed him to get up in the rush when he could. And again, another guy who went through it in 2019. So it started with our older guys, and then it just worked its way through from those top 5 or 6 guys through the remainder of the lineup, because there were a lot of younger guys who were good leaders, at the world junior level, at the junior level, that had to step in and play pretty big roles in a men's tournament.
I'm curious about Power. They interviewed the head coach, and he said, "Well, we're not sure how much he's going to play, but I saw how. I mean, he played fearless. Was that because he never knew any better?"
Well, I think he's got a level of poise and composure in him. He's got a lot of confidence. It really resonated in the game against the Russians, where they came with a lot of speed, a lot of skill, a lot of pressure. And he was a guy that wasn't just getting the puck out. He was making plays. And again, I think you got to give some credit certainly to Gerard and Mike Kelly and Andre Tournier did a really good job with the back end in allowing those guys the opportunity to play the game, give them a lot of confidence to do so. But specifically with Owen, I give a lot of credit to Troy Stetcher too, because he played with him. Once Colin Miller went down, and Owen just got better and better every game, and I think it's a combination of guys surrounding him, making him better, and him having that poise and composure, and obviously being a real good player.
Mike, all of your experiences growing up, coaching, playing, I'm curious about your exposure and the approach Hockey Alberta, Hockey Canada, the branches take in preparing you. How would you address those? How do they affect you? Go ahead.
I'd go specifically with Hockey Alberta, and that's where I got started. And I was fortunate enough to get started. I started the under-17s, just finished coaching in Lethbridge, and had a great opportunity to work. I think back then it was in '93, so we went to the under-17s in Timmins, Ontario. It was a really good opportunity, and it was an eye-opener as far as how organized you have to be. It was my first exposure to short-term competition, and been a coach for a long time, and really condensing 6 months of work into 6 weeks, and working with people you'd never worked with before, and Barry talks a lot about performance on demand, and that's really what it's all about. But I was really fortunate to work with good people. So Barry was an excellent mentor. He made sure that we were very organized. We had a critical path that we followed, which really helped keep us on track and make sure that we were getting things done in a timely fashion. And the success we had at short term, if I look at all the tournaments that we've had, started with the staff. We were mobilized as a staff. And I think when the players saw that, typically the players come after your staff gets together and prepares and organizes. They can see that. So if they can see that your staff is mobilized as a group, is on the same page and working together, and everybody's got a role and everybody's doing their job, the expectation is very simple. It goes right from the staff to the players. And I think. In all those situations, that was certainly one of the key factors to having success and having a real good experience in short-term competition. But that was, to me, it was really important, because those are things that you take for granted, and then you get into short-term and you don't work with people who don't understand your expectations, your standards, and everybody's got to get on the same page and come up with an identity and certainly with a culture in a very short period of time.
I'm going to bring Barry into the fold here a little bit. I've talked to Barry about his experience over the years, and I felt that he's worked at the U17 programs where he worked with coaches, many coaches he never knew. In Alberta, he probably knew the people, like yourself, a little more comfort zone there. But boy, over 7 years, he had to deal with coaches from the OHL everywhere, not just the staff of the team of three, but also a bunch of guest coaches. And there were some challenges that they had to face because of some of the coaching habits they had, that if they carried them out and coached that way internationally in a short-term competition, it would lead to a demise and not success. Barry, can you comment on some of those things? Because when I saw that World Championship team play, uh, I thought everybody played a hell of a lot. There were some people that possibly didn't, but it looked like a great team effort from the top down, and the players stepped up at the right time. But Barry, just on your comments, selecting a staff, training the staff to get ready for that kind of a world competition, some of the challenges for you as a mentor that you experience.
Well, I guess to start with, Wally, like you say, the Team Alberta side has become easy because I do know the coaches. So when you're working with people you don't know, they come in with their own vision and philosophies. The majority of coaches coming in, even though the under 17 program was about development, we're all coaches. We all want to win, but it's that win-win attitude that you try to end up teaching as you end up going through the event. I think the biggest thing that I learned over time is how do you help the coaches to understand that you can't shorten a bench and play your best players at the very beginning of the event, especially when, like Mike was just saying about how the first few games they struggled, because if you do that, you burn out your horses when you're going to need them near the end of the event. They're going to be tired and banged up. And you're also going to lose the other players that you're not playing as much because the culture that you're cultivating on the team isn't going to be there. Their give a shit meter is not going to be nearly as high as if they are getting opportunity to contribute and to do things. So that empowerment is critical. I could go on, but Mike is on. So I just want to ask you, Dickers, in 2015, with the team that we had, we went on the word grit. Why don't you explain a little bit about how all of that came about and what you did starting at the camp to help those kids get ready for the Winter Games?
Well, we had such great experiences at the under 17, and you know, we talked a lot about adversity and about, you know, lightning bolts, and it happens. It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. And no matter what competition I think I've been through, it happens. So, you know, from the first competition in Timmins, where half the team arrived on time, the other half didn't get there until 8 hours later, and we sat in the Boston Pizza and waited for the, you know, the guys from BC to arrive. The guys up from Alberta were already there. And then getting into North Bay at 4 o'clock in the morning, it really set the tone moving forward for preparing for that. So sometimes, you know, as you guys know, you know, these players are very well versed coming in. So if you're gonna find out what they're like when things aren't going their way, sometimes you got to create that setting. You've got to create situations. They're very routine based. So, you know, normally at these competitions, you have everybody get up at 8, breakfast at 8:30. You know, it becomes a routine for them. And in short-term competition, it's anything but that. You know, whether it's bad ice conditions or travel conditions or officiating, things you can't control. It's how you handle those situations. So we created that, and one morning we got them up at 6 and gave them 5 minutes to be outside, and then we did a team obstacle course and a team run, and had them compete against one another, and really, you know, with the coaching staff and the group that we had, we watched. We see how guys reacted to those situations. Were they getting motivated? Were they getting frustrated? Were they getting intimidated? It gave us a pretty clear picture for what we had as far as our group went, and it set the tone. because I think we also understood the kind of identity that we were going to have as a team. We went into the Canada Games not with the best team on paper. We understood exactly who we were, and we tried to link that to something that would really mobilize the group, and it was Ian Mitchell. We were talking about the kind of team we had, and we talked about grit, and grit being how we were gonna roll on and off the ice, and exactly what that meant. And it wasn't just running around being physical. It was about being mentally tough and digging in tough situations as we did in the dorms in Camrose that summer. And Ian talked a little bit. His uncle played in the American League, and being an Alberta boy, he was a gritty player. And I can't remember, the coach at the time said, "Boy, we need more of that Alberta grit. So when you come back to Worcester, Massachusetts, bring some of that grit." And he talked a little bit about dirt with you. So we came up with the idea. We had guys all over the province, from Edmonton to Calgary, and a lot of communities in between. Everybody bought a piece of their land with them, or their dirt, and we mixed it into one big jar, and then we found a spot and we buried it. Prince George is sort of it was a real good team building moment. It resonated with those guys, and I think they understood, and that's pretty critical to any team success in these short-term competitions, is you realize what kind of team you have and the kind of identity you have, and everybody knows where they fit within that identity.
Mike, I really want to thank you. I don't know when you've got to head out to practice here, but
I've got another 5 or 6 minutes.
okay.
Wally. I think it's only just shortly after 8 o'clock here my time, so I've got some more time.
Okay, I don't know how many people watch the World Championships, but I did. The Stanley Cup playoffs are on, and World Championships are second fiddle to the Stanley Cup, but I found the Stanley Cup hard to watch. It was a new degree of physicality, and it wasn't the kind of pure hockey that you could play on big ice. So I really enjoyed the hockey. Mike, I had one question. Your winning gold medal goal, you lost the draw, and your center received they won the draw, but your center intercepted the draw pass. Was that a planned thing, or was it an accident?
No. Well, Nick Paul isn't a true centerman. He's actually a winner, but he killed a lot of penalties for us. And when we were getting ready for the competition, I was, again, you talk about roles. I would take the centerman and work on face-offs, and he would join in, and he was pretty good on draws, but he's not a natural centerman. But he's obviously an NHL player. He's a real smart player. And the one thing that we knew about Finland, I think they had 3 guys in the top 10, 3 centermen in the top 10 in the tournament as far as face-off percentages, and I believe the guy he went up with at that time, where he took that draw, I believe he was the top centerman in the tournament. In fact, I think he was running over 70% at one point. So I think Nick understood that. A pretty smart player, but the stick and the range that he had, I don't think it was a set play. I think he lost the draw, but right away, the way they were lined up to win the draw, they set their defenseman up behind the centerman. It was just a real quick play by him, in the sense that he read that. It's, got his stick in front of it, and that obviously activated the 2-on-1 to lead to the winning goal.
Well, that's a great play. I tried to find it. I recorded the game, but my machine didn't record the overtime. I'm really sorry about that, but it was really a super event, and the difference between coaching the Vancouver Giants and all of a sudden going to a world stage like that, Are there similarities, or what's the difference, or what would take back from that?
Well, the difference is, I mean, I was in a bubble for 62 days with the Giants, and it was you're dealing with young men, you're dealing with juniors, and when you're dealing with juniors, you're dealing with you're making sure they're in bed on time, you're making sure they're up on time, you're making sure they're eating what they're supposed to be eating. You become a parent. Is everything good? Especially in a situation like that where they're in a hotel room for 62 days together, and it can wear on you. It's as much psychological and guidance and counseling as any. When you get to the men's worlds, a lot of those guys are men. We had a young team, but a lot of them are men, and you don't have to worry about those things. You just have to make sure that they're well prepared every time they hit the ice. They're going to be prepared when they come to the rink. It's a matter of getting them prepared, whether it's practice or games, for what they're going to see, because they know what to do. Similarities, though, when you're doing pre-scouts, as good as teams are, there are a lot of similarities in getting your team ready to play. And specifically against the Russians and the Finns, it was it was not overhandling the puck. It was reading certain situations where you could make plays, and others where you had to get the puck in behind them and apply a lot of pressure. And no matter how good those defensemen were, get the right pressure on them, you're gonna turn pucks over and get them back. And I think we became a hard team to play against because we were able to pressure as five, not only up the ice with our forecheck, but with our back pressure as well. And so there's a lot of similarities at the junior level as well.
Well, Mike, I don't know how much more time you've got, but I really want to thank you for joining us. We've got a gentleman on, Andrew Dale. I'm sorry that we couldn't get you on. I did get Andrew on. And Andrew was drafted and played a lot of pro hockey, and was working at Laurentian University doing research on and he's going to spend some time talking about it later. But I'm sure he's a guy that I'll make sure the two of you connect so we can talk about his research tool for trying to develop leadership awareness. In the case of coaches, it's a neat little form which people fill out, players fill out, and it gives a coach a real good perspective to move forward in their coaching. So hopefully the two of you can connect. And
absolutely, I would be really interested in that. No, Wally, I apologize I couldn't be on last week, and I apologize that I couldn't make it work on the Skype, but I thank you for having me, and I again give you lots of credit. This is really good stuff what you're doing, and putting a lot of work in and mobilizing a lot of coaches from a lot of different genres and working with a number of different age groups and doing some great work, Wally. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for your time.
Take care. Have a good day.
Have a good practice. Bye-bye. Sharks, Andrew is on. I'm just going to get Andrew, just so you know who's on the call, and I'm not sure how long people can stay. I'll just ask them to introduce themselves, and I'll get Barry first, and I'll just randomly control that. Now, Andrew, I'm going to mute. There's a professor, Dave Barrett, who's a hockey guy who teaches at one of Guelph or some university. It's the Ivy Business School of Leadership. And because you were coming on, I wanted him to be on so that he's a gentleman that you would definitely be able to connect with in time. He was on earlier, but he's left the call. So I'm going to be, during the introductions, I'm going to be, I'll interrupt to make sure that everybody gets a turn to be introduced. Or Barry, you can start, and we'll ask the person introducing. Barry, you start, and you just call up the next person when you're done. Okay?
What do you want me to say?
Just introduce yourself to Andrew like you don't know him. He doesn't know any of us from Adam.
Okay, Wally, thanks for making me the starter. Hi, Andrew. I'm Barry. I work with Hockey Alberta, coach mentor. So what Wally just said, I didn't realize you were coming on, so I'm going to be very interested to hear what you have to say, and maybe I'll pick your brain later too. Sammy, since you're right in front of me, you're next.
All right, thanks, Barry. Andrew, I'm the one that emailed you, and
Thank you.
for some reason, Wally relies on me for technical assistance. Although as a 45-year-old woman, I'm not sure why that is, but here it is. I played for Wally with the national team and went to 3 Olympics. But now my most recent job was a general manager in the Canadian Women's Hockey League, which I had helped start, but is no longer.
Yep.
So now I'm parenting 2 5-year-olds and loving it.
Busy.
Yeah. And Kim, you're up.
Somehow I knew you were going to throw it to me, Sammy. Hi there, I'm Kim McCullough. I'm in Toronto. I have been coaching girls hockey for 15 years. But prior to that, I was trying to score on Sammy in pro hockey. And before that, I was being yelled at by Wally and other coaches playing pro hockey. I am the director of hockey operations for the largest girls hockey association in the world. So that's a small job. And then I run Total Female Hockey, which is my business. And I also have 3 kids, 7, 5, and 3, who may or may not run into the frame while we're going. So that's me.
No problem.
Nice
Awesome.
to meet you.
Well, thank you so much. Are there others on the call?
I think there's Jordan and
Oh, sorry,
Andrew,
Jordan. I have to throw it. Jordan's up next.
But I'm just going to, before Jordan goes, Andrew, if you go to the top on Skype, I know Skype is not what we use too much in today's era. It says small grid or large grid. There's
Large grid.
So if you go to large grid, you can actually see all the people that have their cameras on. So that
Awesome.
could help you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Actually, this is my first intro into Skype, so I have to thank Wally for bringing me into the new which you guys are always comfortable with. Yes, I see Mr. Fenton, who may have dropped off, and not seeing any of their videos. I'll take a moment to introduce myself, and I would say that this is a group of like friends, because we talk about that hockey family, and and not to go back 30 years and all this stuff, me or this process, but just quickly, in the past year, I had the opportunity to learn about this company. I had been in charge at Laurentian of the students' internships. People may have heard of SPAD. It's a program that develops business kids with a sport interest. And there's a wealth of alumni spread throughout sport and North America. And in particular, as COVID was coming on, our industry, coaching, entertainment, sports, was hit very hard. And so students were losing their internships. We had a call out to alumni asking for help. Take on students, teach them something applied. We didn't want to cut corners around the degree. And so had an opportunity to meet a fella who created a coaching assessment tool in the early 90s based on his work for 10 or 15 years in sports, worked with the Montreal Expos and others, not in sport, but maybe managing hospitality or whatever it was, but was always very keen on the concept of coaching. So at that time, probably pretty cutting edge. Today, coaching is, we know how important it is. So he interviewed experts like Philippe Alou, Cito Gaston, Jacques Demers. He was clearly a Habs fan, but he put together an assessment tool and had it validated mid-90s and has used that tool for a couple decades in the corporate world. You think sales teams, operations teams, and think about the skills necessary for coaching. So given the context of media highlights a couple of years ago, the quote unquote crisis of coaching in terms of where are things going? What's the ethical dilemma? He wondered, is there an opportunity to bring this tool back to sport? And so, long story short, Laurentian is facing insolvency. My role got cut. We've developed a good working relationship mentoring students. And he asked me to help bring some enthusiasm and call it development to this, to see if it's an opportunity that coaches, organizations, associations would be interested in improving development. So that's really the crux. I am happy to share lots of detail, but I know that questions become very specific. And so, I can do all that. What I was mostly interested in when I saw the sports edition of this assessment tool, call it 45 questions, they're survey questions, they provide info. The details aren't really important. But what's really interesting was one of the people who's a member of the Shark group here is Danielle Goyette. And Goyette. And she is actually an experienced coach who's done this tool. And I share that with this group because I know that people know her. And I think she's provided a testimonial about the impact this has had. And really the crux of why I'm so interested in this tool is twofold. One is I was guinea pig number 1 in the tool last spring, where I used my little 11, 12-year-old high performance, youth team and their parents to fill it out as could I learn something? And I personally saw a tool identify a critical element that I could improve at. It was called delegation. And I could look back and reflect and say, you know what? I didn't delegate much this year. I can see how that, and then I thought, wow, this is a skill I can learn. I do some some coaching development around delegating, and suddenly I become a better coach. So last summer, I reached out to my friend who was the coach of the Sudbury Wolves at the time, Corey Stillman. He's now with Arizona. And I said, Corey, this could have an impact, especially in a development program like junior or school, where there's a natural turnover of players and you might get these cohorts. I'm getting a little detailed, but this is where a light bulb went on for me about, hey, wait a second. I can get an objective survey tool that identifies things about me and my character as a coach from both subordinates, players, and supervisors, GMs, and learn how my skills are perceived in this group. Because I would imagine talking to this group, this is a high performance group. And so people are looking for cutting edge competitive advantage, but also looking to improve. And when Wally told me about the spirit of this group, it makes me think that this is a group of people who are not only lifelong learners, but drivers of development, innovation, and how this tool could be really interesting. So costs on it, in my mind, are very minimal. It's a complementary tool to the things we already implement. So we implement good nutrition, we implement training off ice and on ice, or off court and on court. We have a mental performance coach, Barry, or maybe it was Mike, talking about the resources players have today around performance coaches, mental performance coaches, nutritionists, trainers, physical strength conditioning. It runs the gamut. And so this assessment could be a very useful tool. Now, to share screen, I could do that. I have 2 slides to give you a visual. But where I thought this group might have the most interest in exploring how this tool could be used is, rather than thinking of the tool as a top-down, bottom-up assessment from the GM or athletic director to the head coach to the players, is really around putting that head coach in the top role and putting your goalie coach, your goalie might be a little narrow, but your assistant coaches in the seat to learn about how they're perceived from a credibility perspective, from a skill perspective, as it relates to the players. And so this is where I thought some really interesting learning. I don't know how it would work in the context of today's call as it relates to short-term tournaments and coming together. But when you have a season and can recheck and a cycle in sort of our standard development programs, could be a really interesting thing. And the reason I'm here today is because Wally was filling me in. I don't know how much time people have, so I really am going to sort of summarize. But I reached out to an old friend, Paul Henry, last week. And I've known Paul for 30 years. And immediately he said I needed to talk to Wally. And then we talked. And that's why I was here, because I'm enthusiastic about the tool and what it can provide in terms of insights as part of that toolbox. And so I was thinking I might just post my email and my and a little bit of background that you could go look at. I recognize, and I'm actually thankful there aren't as many members, so that I can answer some questions. And I would love to sort of leave you with that, taste or that seed planted, and offer an opportunity to answer some more specific questions that this little presentation might have raised in your minds from your experiences.
Mike, Andrew, if you'd like to show the slides, I'm going to ask the Sharks to share information with you related to what you've talked about. Everybody here, Jordan Fenton hasn't introduced himself. Jordan, would you introduce yourself, please? He's a principal of a school. So we've got different perspectives, people who have experienced all kinds of things related to what you're talking about. So Jordan, could you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I guess Wally's already mentioned I am a principal of a school, administrator at a elementary school now, just outside of Calgary in Chestermere. Been involved in hockey for quite a few years and at all different levels, and both on the male and female side, and had the privilege to work with Barry doing some mentorship pieces at some short-term competitions, and so I've seen both the short-term piece as well as coaching for full seasons. So, but this is something really interesting, Andrew. Question and that I would have for you is, how many times did you run the survey with your parent group or with your own team through a season?
Okay, great question. And happy to answer that. The context is the tool didn't change much. So it's been, 30 years in use all over the world, multiple languages, and validated 3 or 4 times with, several years in between validation from different universities. I think Concordia in Montreal, Bowling Green in Ohio. So different groups of statisticians have validated the tool. Specific to answer your question, one time. So it was postseason. COVID had shortened and abruptly shortened the season, and a very vague coaches survey was sent out. Think about it as the association wanted to get some input, sort of random input. And I was like, I had this opportunity to share this with my players and parents to be like, hey, maybe you could enlighten me on what you saw this year. What was good, what was bad, this and that. What's really interesting about the tool is you can take a high performance coach who's quite skilled and just raise the level of analysis to identify the weaker perceived skills. So it can be redone. So what I would love to do is redo it with those parents, have another season with them. Did I improve on the delegation skill like was identified? And then what next should I improve on? Is it my whatever those case might be, right? The tool is complementary to other tools we've seen in the marketplace and things you may be familiar with. So DISC assessment is a profile tool that would identify how people respond to and communicate. So that would be an excellent example of how does coach A speak to player B and C, but not player F and G because of their, sort of defaults. And of course, a very flexible coach who can adjust would probably do well to get the most out of each player. What this tool does is identifies gaps. And here's a really brief example. Let's say you've got 20 kids on a team. 10 of them score coach as very poor, giving them a 1 on this one thing, but 10 of the kids score them very high, giving them a 4 out of 4. Well, the average is sort of 2.5 when you add it all up and divide by 20. Not bad, very close to the average. It's kind of good, but you're seeing a real differentiated sets of groups. And so the example I used when I was sharing this with Corey Stillman last year was, hey, do you tend to lean on your senior players a little more than your freshmen, your rookies? Is there and so you can learn about the natural sort of things. You might already know that, yes, you do that, but then it might identify how do you communicate to your rookies that gap, and what do you need to do to earn their respect, whatever. So you can do that. The key is that the assessment gives you enough information and you can go away and incorporate it. It's really then, and this is where Wally and my discussion earlier in the week really struck home. It's really about the continued development on, are you meeting these things? So having that coach, mentor, expert to help you along, right? And that's where self-reflection, video helps to apply the learning. When I was in the academic setting.
Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm trying to find my wave of the hand, and I don't know if the person speaking can see the wave of the hand, but.
Or maybe I'm just ignoring it.
No, I don't know where the hand is to raise, but I'm going to interrupt you because.
No problem.
I want to tell you about a tool that we created 3 years ago, similar to that we apply at coaching clinics when I deliver coaching clinics. It's just a questionnaire as coaches come in to evaluate themselves in 10 traits, 1 to 10. And they're all ethical statements related to coaching communication with parents, with players, with your staff, with officials. And it's to set the tone for a mission statement exercise that will override the theme of the entire 8-hour day clinic. It's a 45-minute tool, but it's just an awareness thing. They're immediately looking at themselves and thinking about, how do I relate to coaches? How do I relate to my staff? How do I treat referees? How do I treat parents? And that awareness is what we're talking about here.
Yes.
And that to me is a tool that could be very effective. And I've just seen the looks on faces. But that tool, and I mentioned the exercise to you down the road, we can spend more time on it. And I wanted to ask Barry, who's very familiar with these kind of leadership applications. Barry, have you experienced anything like this in your work, working with teams, coaches, organizations?
As far as the tool itself, or just in general trying to develop leadership?
Well, any tool, anything to develop leadership. I interrupted to bring up it's 10 questions. It's one sheet. I can email it out. They can fill it out, but boy, when they fill it out and they're looking at you and you're asking, how many of you gave yourselves a 7 out of 10? How many of you had to think twice about it and were a little embarrassed? And they were. You've got to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
And that tool to me is sort of a aha moment to make the point with the coach with what are you here for? So Barry, anything you can?
Yeah, I think, a big part of what I do relates to working with the coaches, but the coaches obviously work with the players. And so one of the things that we found in both my work with Alberta and with Canada is that a lot of these kids coming through, and even the coaches, that leadership component isn't very strong. And so the self-awareness piece, what you're talking about, Andrew, I think is really critical. Wally, I think I know the document that you're talking about. I was just trying to find it when you nailed me with talking here. But I think it's something that's really important because we don't teach leadership. We don't give players the opportunity to learn how to be leaders and put them in situations where they can be successful. So similar to what Mike was saying when he used the 2015 example, about what we did with that team, we created a culture of leadership there with everybody to end up making sure that that they were all in. Like it was something that it was a leader full team, not just a leader team, so that everybody had opportunity because they can all lead in different ways. So in short, that's sort of what it's all about, Andrew.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. While you were talking, I threw up a picture and I can't tell if you can see it.
Yeah,
we can.
Oh, you can, because I don't see it. I just see it on my computer, but I see you guys. So that's kind of neat. You know what, Barry, you're in the position of GM, athletic director, executive director, NSO. That would be, is this a useful tool for your coaches to learn about themselves and how they interact with their play? That would be a whole strategic sort of plan. That would, you know what I mean? That would come about. But I wanted to put this up here because what I wanted to change, so I would see you in your position, Sammy, you would be the same, the general manager. Is this something that's useful for your head coach? But the head coach could easily be put in that scenario to learn about that and what does that look like. And a lot of times we have coaches that spend a couple years with these players in the development stages, the learn to train, the train to perform, the high performance long-term athletic development model. And I mean, this is where I just felt actually humble to be able to speak with this group, because I know that your input can help improve the kinds of reports and information that can be gathered. But I also know that's very robust, that will offer some insight. So again, whether you're looking at short-term repeat, like Barry asked, what I'm going to do personally this year, I was just awarded a AAA Pee Wee team, 13-year-old, so the top end in Northern Ontario. I'm going to have myself assessed in October after a month of getting to know the kids. Who knows what COVID looks like and how the return, get a sense. And then I'm going to redo it in end of February, March, to get a sense of what does this group, new group of players, parents perceive? How can I improve? And not everything I'm going to agree with. It's like anything. It's, do I agree with this? Does it make sense to me? No. Okay, they don't know me well enough yet. Let's repeat and make sure I'm communicating those things. So that's it. What I wanted to point out in sharing this slide was the tool assesses 4 things to start: coach's credibility, coach's desire, coach's skills, and then the coach's capacity or resources available. So again, the discrepancy might be wide versus reality. And when you find those discrepancies, you can address them and then get people on the same page. Maybe stop focusing on those gaps and start focusing on the things that are together. And then it does it, all of those things in the context of the climate and the image portrayed. And so those get really detailed. And I didn't want to, but I did want to show you what that looks like. And very similar to the work integrated learning model cycle is the next slide, which, see if I can get it down, is just that cyclical model. So back to what Barry asked about in terms of, you identify a couple of skills to work on, you put together a plan, you go through time, you improve, you reassess, then you do the test again. What have you improved? And you reassess. And it's that reflection piece that really adds value. It's a hard skill to learn, but one thing that I thought was really interesting, and I think Drew Bannister is a part of the Hockey Canada development. He's now coaching in the American Hockey League, and he's a youth friend of mine. We grew up together. He's a few years older. He went off to the Sioux. He's a high-performing, high-achieving coach now on the basis of a playing career. And what he said to me was really insightful. He said, once you get to the pro ranks in the NHL, if you don't have the ability to self-reflect, you're not going to stay very long. And this skill in developing our players and developing ourselves really is a critical tool. We use video, we use things to objectively observe. And I always use the analogy with my business students. Carey Price watches goalie footage of himself of the night before so he can see if his angles were right or wrong or whatever. That's an easy way to do it. To be an intern, fetching coffee, preparing spreadsheets, looking at marketing slides, is very difficult to get a snapshot of your performance. So that self-reflection is key. And it's very rare that we have video of the coach at the end of the game to watch. How did he talk to this player versus that player? What was his decorum? How was his message? Was he emotional? I know, Wally, you mentioned that that's a tool you guys use at times, but the majority don't. And so this kind of skill could be really useful. And that's what this thing will do. So anyways, that's all I wanted to share on that. And just kind of give you guys a little sense of what it could do. And happy to answer any of the questions that Wally or the group might have. I see your hand is up.
Yeah, Barry, I just wanted to point out that simple sheet used at coach certification clinics, just for them to evaluate themselves. On that particular sheet, there are 3 other rating columns to be done by players and parents. And just the coach doing the evaluation, knowing that players are going to do it and parents are going to do it, it may not happen, but in some associations, they use that form to select coaches in the end of the season. Because if you're not rated very high by the majority of the parents or the players, in minor hockey, you're not likely going to come back. But it depends on the board. It depends on the politics of minor hockey executives. So, Kim, go ahead.
Thanks, Wally. I was just going to piggyback on that our organization does have a parent survey or a team survey that goes out to all the players and coaches on I believe it's U15 and up. It goes to the players as well as the parents. I think below U15, it's only going to the parents. And it varies by team how much uptake there is, like how many people fill it out. But having received those evaluations for 14 years, it seems to have a trend for, you're sort of ranking coach's ability to communicate, coach's ability to run an effective practice. There's a lot of variables across the top. I assume it's done in SurveyMonkey. I've actually never filled one out because I've always been the coach of the team. And I would say you get like the people it's all anonymous. You can tell who are the disgruntled people. And they usually show their colors by making a comment in the comment section that you can figure out whose kid, parent, mom, dad, whomever is filling it out. And then you get the glowing reviews and you don't get a ton of the middle. So I would say, it's the average coach is probably getting 12 to 20 people filling it out, which is a pretty good number. So I guess, if a parent and a player on each team filled it out, the max you could get would be 34. And so most coaches like to see it. They get pissed off at the comments that, didn't, put Sally on at the wrong time. Like there's stupid stuff people put in there. You're like, okay, thanks. Like they're just airing their laundry.
That's right.
But now that I'm the coach, I now pick the coaches for association.
Yes.
I'll be honest, I haven't used that as a way to evaluate them yet, because in the COVID year, we didn't,
Yes.
like they still got the evaluations, but it didn't really,
Yes.
it could only evaluate you on your ability to run practice. So I have not yet used it as a way to determine should someone be coaching or not the following year.
Yeah.
But, I've always been interested in seeing it as a coach and seeing where people perceive my strengths or my weaknesses are. And I think all of our coaches have found that feedback very valuable and
Yes.
typically lines up with what they already believed to be true about themselves. Most of them say that there's nothing there that they're like, wow, I really didn't know that about me.
Yeah.
It's sort of reinforcing what they already believed. But of course, typical, human mindset, we immediately look at the 2 negative comments and not the 45, like,
That's
Kim's
right.
great.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, valuable to have those specific, comments.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, in this tool, like, is it fully anonymous? Do people get to make specific comments, like beyond just no? Okay,
No.
so it's
This is fully anonymous, and it's the coach's information. Of course, a coach might fear that a GM might get the information and use it against them, right? So this is, got to overcome that obstacle, but it's and there isn't room for interpretable comments, because that's not what the tool is designed for. The tool is statistically significant, has been validated multiple times to force decisions, and it's a 4-point Likert scale. It forces you to pick: do they do this skill? Never, sometimes, most of the time, and always. And we all are like, well, I mean, we're all, so when you force a decision of they always do that versus, and then you see another person who says they never do that, that's a wide gap, really, really wide gap in the terms of the standard deviations from the norm or the average. And that's when it gets into the statistical details, which not that important. It's really, what do you draw out of it to improve? Because I shared, Kim, that experience around 12 of my 18 families did the survey, 6 positive, 6 negative. Clearly the disgruntled dad whose son was the best and should have been on the ice all the time, and it just, you're always going to have that in those surveys. And that's where this tool is a little bit different. It's more around basing how to develop, or what skills to develop for that coach. So it really becomes part of a bigger picture tool that some organization's really interested in, and really convinced me, because I was like, whoa, this is interesting. It identified the things I was, and more importantly, gave me resources to improve on those skills, and then you go do some reading, you do some application, you reflect on how you're doing, and how do you get involved, and you're off to the races. So that's it. I don't know how long your club goes on. So do we still have time?
We can go on forever usually. Sometimes we last till noon, but I have a question.
Sure.
I'm looking at your questionnaire, and I think you're meeting with Mike Johnson in Portland. Yep. You're going to be talking to him. Well, we've had some NHL guys on here that are, all oriented towards that higher level of coaching.
Yep.
And I think most everybody on here is at the elite community level.
Yes.
And the community level, whether it's recreational or not.
Yes.
My question was, it appears that the form you're giving, at least the 2 slides you've shown, they're skewed to business, to corporations. And it sort of looks like, I see it as a bit of a maze. in terms of just looking at it.
Yep.
And I'd like to keep things simple. And I don't know if anybody here, from what they've heard, has any advice for Andrew in pursuing this as a tool. People have asked about it. What does it cost, Andrew?
Yep. No, those are excellent questions. First question is, you're absolutely right. The visuals you saw were geared for corporate. And this group is getting a preview of the concept before launch. So launch, which is scheduled for August, will have more sports edition focus, right? So yes, simple is good. Cost is very simple. It's $250, which is broken down by the assessment, $150, and its report, and then $100 fee. That would be like the setup fee. So that's the cost. Repeats would be just the redo of the assessment and then the investigation of the details. And then the real question is, does an organization or coach invest in their own mentor, their own sort of, person? So that's really, I think the most cost would end up there. In my opinion, we're out there searching for more sports coaches to participate in this. So I would, this is a preview. We recognize that we're looking for ambassadors, mavens, and people who go, there's something here, and give feedback. So I'd be more than happy to explore, doing something for interested parties on this call, complimentary, and then ask them for their feedback on the process, the content, and that would really be the quote unquote payment, because you guys are experts. You have that expertise. You can bring it back and you can help improve this. We're going to face the same sort of general sort of feedback. And so I would love for that opportunity, but I would leave it to you, your group, Barry, Kim, Sammy on this call. You may not have a team right now through which you're, leading, in which case, how do you get assessed? But you may have a person, or you may know Danielle and reach out to her and be like, hey, what's the deal here? That to me would be a big, it would be validation in itself. Right now, I'm not seeing any negative feedback. And so I say, okay, without any negative feedback, where does it go? But we have to turn on the tap of interest and, start getting it trickling before it can really start pouring, in terms of what the model looks like and who's buying into it, right? And so my goal would be, if there's a person that Sammy, would be interested in this and they have a group, would love to be engaged and explore what that looks like, Same with you, Barry. If there's somebody in your network that you're like, this is a coach of a U17 team that I'd like to explore this with, and they're interested because they're really progressive, let's explore what that looks like, as a bit of a test pilot. So
I just put my hand up because I know I'm going to call Danielle.
Good.
She's had I think, when did you do this with her?
I didn't do it personally. It was through a OHL graduate named Dr. Cassidy Preston, I think. I think he did it in the wintertime. I think it was January, February, March-ish of 2021.
Recently?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Because
one thing I would actually like to tell this group is that the number of, and I have a one pager I can share with you, Wally, is that female coaches, women sport coaches, so men, dads coaching girls sport, have had a significant interest in this compared to the group. So if we've done 30 or 40 coaches so far, closing in on half of them are involved in girls sport. Well, that kind of makes sense, but it just seems like a really strong focus in learning and having a competitive advantage. Maybe even more open to self evaluation, self reflection. Don't know those things. Those are just me surmising and having had the experience of watching, the AAA coach in the boys division at U15 who knows it all and might be getting his teams because he knows the board member. Who knows, right? So it's not a confirmed, but it's just a trend that might be very interesting.
I'm wondering if Kim, do you see any possibility of experimenting with this within your organization?
Kim's in Toronto.
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, I think so. We have 32 competitive teams in our organization, and then another 40 to 50 house league teams. So I think it's something that, perhaps, we could set up a separate call and go through, sort of the details of it. But I think, for me, as the coach evaluator, I see value in that. Is there a way to make the information a little bit more user-friendly on my end to be able then to either convey to the coach or make a judgment call on the coach for their future selection, right? So I think there's a value to the coaches themselves and the coaching staffs themselves, as well as me from more of the administrative end, with a very large pool of coaches and teams. So we should definitely set up a time to connect and see if it's something we can do. It would certainly give you a lot of data points if we could go through with that many teams.
Yeah, no, I just got the questions about cost. They just popped up on my screen, so I don't know why they're delayed. But anyways, I think I answered them for Barry. I know you said you had to bounce, so totally understand and appreciate the opportunity to share. I posted my email, so if I get any inquiries or like to set up another call, happy to.
Okay, the one thing that I'll have to do is just check to see where we would be at it. I'm in such a different circumstance, Andrew, with working with short-term teams, that it's a little bit different. And the cost might be a little bit prohibitive, especially with what's happened the last while.
No.
Certainly I will bring it up though. And I'm going to send the information sorry.
I would love to have a time to explore with the experts, the person who created the tool, and what does that look like around short term, right? And is there value, is there not? Like, I think maybe there's a scaled down version. I don't know. Those are lots of questions that this group kind of affords me. So I can use that and bring it back to them.
Okay, and what I would do, I have your email address as well. I can share mine. So if you find anything out in regards to that, that would be great.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure. That's super.
Thanks, Wally. I got to run. I got a meeting.
Okay.
Take care, guys.
Sammy Joe?
Let me just come off mute. You know what I specifically love about this tool, Andrew? Thank you for your presentation. Is I work can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm just up in Northern Ontario, so the reception is a little bit slow for me, but.
Me too.
Oh, nice. We're up in the Haliburton area. Where are you?
Sudbury.
Oh, you're Sudbury.
Yeah.
We were in Sudbury a couple weeks ago shooting Letterkenny.
Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah, they put the ice in somewhere to do it, eh? Can't remember where.
Something with a T. It starts with a T.
Tom Davies. That's right. Tom Davies in Lively.
Yeah.
No, you're in Rebecca Johnson territory right now.
Well, yeah, that's true. Okay, so what I love about the tool is I work as a professional speaker. So slash consultant, I guess. Yes. I'm reluctant to call myself a consultant. No. So within the professional speaking world, I belong to the Association of Professional Speakers. There's a ton of sales speakers, and they all use these kinds of forms, right? This 100%. Is, what they're using with their clients. And so I love the assessment that allows somebody to assess themselves first and get the coach talking with them. So that's what I
Yes.
specifically love about it. Whether it's, I've certainly done my share of DISC assessments and all those things over the years.
Yep.
But what I love specifically about this is it brings sport into business. And so
Yep.
I love that connection. And that's something that I've always wanted to do as well, because I've seen it in the clients that I have currently, that if they just treated themselves like a sports organization, they'd be way better off, right? And so
Yep.
some of the best teams that I've belonged to have used these, sports teams have used these tools. And so I applaud you for using them in the, using it essentially in the business world, morphing the best of the sports world into the business world, and vice versa, bringing some of those results back so that it can.
And that's
help.
exactly it. So this is the fella Gilles' business in the corporate world. He has consultants just like, yourself. If you have a client who's looking for advice on this or that, that's great. And it could span a number of topics. But if it spans the topic of improving a manager, sales manager, whatever's coaching abilities, or flip the word, because you're just using that label, the word coach, or the coach's management abilities, because you're just really playing with the term. And that's what's really the neat thing about it. And so he has.
And what I love when I go into a client is, I want to fix the problem, because you can see the problem from the outside, right? So you want to fix the problem, but that doesn't help them. If they're going through assessments like this, they are able to fix it themselves. And so that's what I love about it. And that's what I love.
So you can be the consultant, interpreting, helping. Yeah. So I just got certified to do that. And that's exactly the opportunity that exists, right? Because ultimately you're just trying to help performance. And this is one tool. It's not the only tool. It's just one for that, for that problem, right? So.
Yeah. And tools like this are very good for those of us that just like to talk and not listen. This is a very good listening tool, which I'm always appreciative of those tools.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So thank you.
No, thank you.
That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, neat.
I just wanted to run this by Kim. Kim, I think we had talked in earlier Sharks calls about parents coaching their kids. They didn't know anything about hockey, but in some way they had an ethical base that they would be really good coaches because of their communication skills and their ability to get along. And then we also talked about, someone had mentioned the know-it-all coach at the competitive level who would benefit from this kind of a form. And it's a matter of how to use the form, or whether the form, how it's taken. So Kim, I don't know to what degree. I think you've got a pretty good handle on the ethics of coaching out there. But what we've heard before is that, generally speaking, in your association, the coaches they're doing it for the right reason. And because of that, they're probably doing pretty good jobs. So I'm not sure. I'm really curious about what you said, Andrew, about the difference between coaching men, coaching women, male coaches coaching women, parent coaches. There's a whole different dynamic there.
Well, Wally, I can speak to that just quickly. Like in our organization, if we have 32 competitive coaches, 8 of them are non-parents. So 1/4 of our coaches are non-parents, or sorry, I guess they could. I'm a parent, but my kids aren't on the team. That sort of thing. So I would classify myself as a non-parent coach. And so interestingly, in a lot of the surveys we've already done in the past, the non-parent coaches get very high scores typically on, what I would call like the soft stuff, or the softer skills, like their ability to deal with people and conflict, and like the really important things that sometimes we don't validate as much as someone's ability to like run a very beautiful practice. And the flip side is typically the non-parent coaches get higher scores in terms of, how effectively they run the ice, and how they add in things like mental training or physical training. And so there does seem to be a discrepancy. Also, a lot of our non-parent coaches tend to be much younger and wouldn't have as much business experience, so they may not have been exposed to this type of analysis or self-reflection because they tend to be, late
Former
20s, early 30s, and maybe haven't, explored that side of their professional career yet. So I do think in our organization, at least, there is a bit of a divergence there, and that typically our non-parent, or sorry, our parent coaches have a lot to teach our non-parent coaches, and vice versa. So there's a lot of in-house mentoring that can be done there. Because
do you do that, Kim? Do you have a mentor program?
Yeah, you're looking at it. I don't have a program. This is another thing on the list of things to do. But what we do try to do with our non-parent coaches is give them an assistant or somebody else with them who has experience coaching within our organization. So we have a very high retention rate, especially amongst the parent coaches. They just, stay around and even want to come back after their daughter has graduated to help out. It's not, an explicit program yet, in that there's a specific task to do or things to seek out. But
that's always a healthy balance, in terms of what you're asking them to do. They're already volunteering, and it's not easy.
But also this is the part that would be interesting, and I don't know how you would figure this out with the assessment tool, but of course the non-parent coaches are held to a different standard than the parent coaches. The parent coaches are, hey, thanks for volunteering your time. We're so happy. Oh, you did this extra thing. Cool. Like, thanks. That's awesome. Yeah. And then the parents all of the non-parent coach teams, or on the non-parent coach teams, all think that, like, we're making Mike Babcock money and, this is our full-time vocation. And so it would be interesting, and we'll talk about further, those assessments, the way they're going to be graded is going to be very different, right? Very, very different. Even though they're essentially doing the exact same job, the expectations would be, and I do see that already come out in the assessments that we already do, right? Anything that parent coach does is just amazing. And I agree, it's amazing given everything else they have going on in their lives. But sometimes the non-parent coaches, if they're not doing everything and anything at every moment, the parents like, oh, they're horrible.
Sure.
And they're not getting paid much money. It's very different. The boys hockey side, at least here in Ontario, if you're coaching a minor hockey team at the AAA level, AA level, even single A, the money is double, triple, quadruple what paid coaches are getting paid in minor hockey in the female side. So the expectations.
I'm up here in the boondocks, and I don't expect any money, even though I'm coaching a AAA team and will invest a lot of time. But I've heard stories about old teammates of mine in the GTA that I'm baffled. I'm baffled. So,
actually,
but anyways.
Maybe I should go coach on the boys' side just for that side of it.
Exactly.
But, no, I do think it's an interesting tool. I'm excited to chat with you about it, and I would be, very fascinated to see the trends. And again, with our huge organization, you might actually be able to get all the trends just in one shot. So we'll set up a time to chat for sure.
I really look forward to that, Kim. You have my email, so send me a note, and I'll bring in some experts to answer more questions to ensure that we get those. I ran a program this winter for girls because there wasn't a lot being offered. And then there was no varsity. So I incorporated the girls from the varsity team at Laurentian, which is now defunct, but it was an amazing process to watch these 18, 19, 20-year-old girls get up at 7 a.m. on a Sunday to train with these 12 and 13-year-old girls, because there was an absence of hockey. And and these were not rep girls. They were kind of house league that wanted more, you know what I mean? Started late, only been playing for 3 years. It was just so rewarding. And yes, of course, if you surveyed those parents, my reviews would be glowing. Not one game, not one benched player. So,
Jordan Fenton, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Willie. I was just going to kind of tie into both what Sammy and Kim were talking about. Andrew, I think that in hearing what you're saying, that this would be a really good growth tool that a person could use for development. And that, well, as Sammy alluded to, a listening tool for those of us that don't necessarily listen to those around us as much as we probably should. But the only cautionary tale that I might have with it is if it gets muddied into seen as being used as an evaluative tool. Like you talked about it being in control by the coach themselves, and you'd alluded that if a general manager was grabbing that information in that piece, and yeah, it's, I think that it has to be one or the other, because in my experience, well, in working with people in a mentorship role, I find that a mentorship role can be really effective if you're not the person evaluating them. And as an administrator in a school, you end up evaluating first-year teachers or people that are on remediation plans. And so you technically can't fulfill that mentorship role as well as you'd like. Whereas on the flip side, you can mentor other people that you are not evaluating, and that piece. So
no, and when I talked to Drew about it, the example he gave, he's really blunt. He's like, if I'm in the third year of a 3-year contract, there's no way I'm trying this on for fear of that. And it could be private as private can be, but it's just the fear. He said, if he's in year 1 of a 4-year plan or a 4-year contract, the relationship is solid. Well, maybe this is a really useful tool. And I thought that was really insightful, especially at the pro level. And so you are quite right. It becomes about who's driving the process, who owns it, and then what is the intent, right? And I think the intent, the spirit, it's very similar to the intent of this group, which is lifelong learning, growth, open growth mindset, like the kind of idea that says, hey, I'm going to learn about something. I'm not going to try to avoid my failures, but learn from those failures. The idea of, we don't lose, we just, learn. And so this is kind of the idea. And is it naive? I hope not in this model. I hope not in the context, but maybe. I think Sammy talked about people looking to perform and grow. Well, if they have a goal, this can help. Then you help them along, and so yeah, you could see this apply in the academic world for teachers with students and that sort of thing, especially as they grow. You can see it, but that's more corporate. We're just trying to stay in the the varsity, junior, development, pro rank of sport. And we've been sort of thinking about team sport versus individual sport, right? So think of the golf professional who has a bunch of clients who are all paying them to learn technical. Now, can this tool help them improve their ability to coach? And I think it can. Question is, how? And then who's doing the mentoring to bring that golf pro along in improving their communication skill for this or that, right? So anyway, so that's just a little bit of an answer to that. I was curious, Jordan, you're working at Ivy. What do you do there?
No, I'm an elementary school principal.
Oh, sorry. Okay. You're elementary school principal. My bad. Okay.
Yeah.
That was Dave Barrett who did. I thought he'd be able to get on the call, and I'll
mix you up. Sorry, Gordon.
With him later. Okay. Now we've got a few other people on the call here. I'm not sure. Is that a snowman? The image of a snowman. Who is that?
Oh, Tracy.
Okay. Tracy Beatty. Tom Beloy. Tom and I are the elder statesmen of the group. Uh, both have taught school and coached multiple sports and coached hockey all our lives. So, and the older you get, the more unlikely you are to accept change. And I'm curious about your approach, your thoughts, Tom.
Well, I think it's always a good idea to assess where you're at. I think my experience is you can do the same thing with 5 different groups, and they can be on that scale, you say, from a 1 to 4, what they think about what you did. And
Yep.
but it's good to find out what people are thinking and see if you need to make adjustments and all this kind of stuff. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. Is I'm on my 21st college team right now, and half have been men, half have been women. I'm the only guy to coach at all 3 institutions in Calgary, and so I've got a real gamut of things. Plus, I coach for the Red Bulls in Salzburg, and so I've been over there too. So
Is that where
I've seen a
Paul
lot of
Henry was?
the hockey world, I guess.
Yeah. Is that where Paul Henry was, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul was there with me, and we took a trip to Munich one day to visit Mark Heatley. He was playing Div 2 over there.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul was there quite a bit of the time. And he's a great guy.
Oh, for sure. I think like Brian Savage took his kids over there for 1 year or a couple of years of development and coaching. And I remember 2 years ago talking to Paul DiPietro. He was a teammate of mine in Phoenix in the 90s. And I don't think he was with the Red Bull, but he was with a different group, I can't remember. But the European model is very integrated, top to bottom, development right through, high skill, high competency. Ours has a really different nature, very interesting nature because there's so much change.
Yeah, well, the club model is really unique because, like Erkko Westerlund, the head of the Finnish hockey, he told me, I've been in Finland many times. He told me we can't afford to cut a kid at 12 years old because hasn't grown yet, because we don't have that many players. So their goal is to develop players to play on their senior team, and the really good, a lot of their best coaches are coaching the youth hockey, so they get the really solid fundamentals, and they're part of that, the club, and is really different than we do things here. Everybody's kind of on their own, and we have AA, AAA, and now there's break-off groups that are having elite, little kids groups, and so and then the Americans, they really pay their coaches a lot, and they seem to be passing us right now on both the male and female side as far as skill development.
Yep.
So it's which is the best? Who knows? I guess
it raises the topic you raise reminds me of the Icelandic soccer team. When you talk about we don't have a lot of players, because I would say Northern Ontario is a great example of not having a lot of players. The player drain to larger places. People are leaving for better opportunities. So, the Icelandic soccer model was like, there's 300,000 people in this country, but they're playing on the World Cup. How? They don't cut anybody. They let them grow. They always have room for someone until you become 18, and then you start making things, because now you've got the widest triangle possible.
I'll give you an example. I did this under 12 team, I guess, a long time ago. And the 2 tiniest guys on the team, one guy grew and played in the NHL, scored 25 goals, played in the last Olympics for Canada.
Yep.
Mason Raymond.
Yep.
Another guy never grew, a little guy, Brian Duncan. He's still 5'6", but he won the Hobey Baker, and he was on a line with Taves and Oshie.
Right.
He won the Hobey Baker, and he ended up playing in Salzburg.
Yep.
And then one of the big kids was Jeremy Colleton, who's now coaching Chicago.
Okay.
But he was always big.
Right.
But we had two big defensemen that they never grew past 5'10". They played major juniors defensemen. But
Yep.
so to be cutting kids at 12 years old, because they're not big, is just ludicrous.
Oh, I mean, I have a kid who's 5'10", he's 12, and he's 180 pounds. And when he stands next to the goalie, who's not 5 feet and maybe 80 pounds, it's hilarious. It's I don't even know if it's funny. How could they be in the same birth year? But they are. And to cut them makes no sense to me, because eventually that kid will grow. And I actually count myself I was a bigger kid. I was a faster kid. I was always on that top end. So I was a high prospect. But you know what I didn't learn was maybe some of those skills that you need when you're challenged, because you're finding different ways to do it, right? When you can always outskate them, well, do you learn the details? It's just like the kid who at 7 is skating circles around everybody. But once they get close at 11, 12, guess what? It doesn't happen. The gap closes. So did you incorporate the skills? But anyways, that's a bit off topic, but no, it's really neat, Tom. I appreciate the insight.
Tom, I just wanted to bring the girls into play here. Sammy and Kim, have you ever encountered that where size was a factor in female hockey in terms of player selection, player growth, development, and not looking at them as realistically in the long term?
Well, I think when I first joined women's hockey, that was the beauty of women's hockey, was it allowed all body types to play. So you could have a Tammy Shuchek on the ice with a Jillian Apps, 6 foot and 5 foot, and it'd still be okay. But I am starting to notice, specifically in the goaltending position, obviously that's what I'm lean towards more, is the taller goalie is getting assessed simply because of height. And so in the Hockey Canada skills 3-day coaching session that I just took, the certification, height was a evaluation tool without it saying how you played with your height or whether you played big or anything like that. So it is automatically there. Now, Emma Smashmeyer is on the national team, and she is quite a small goalie, so she is kind of bucking the trend. So I'm not sure how much it is precluding players from women's hockey, but I feel like it's starting to permeate, because in the NHL, the coaches see that all the goalies are really big and that's the way it needs to go. But I'm not sure it has precluded players from playing, but it certainly has allowed the taller goalie to make it to the higher levels quicker, is what I'm seeing. Is that what you're seeing, Kim?
Yeah, I can speak on, this is the first time I'm ever going to say anything about goalies. But the majority of my goalies at the midget and junior level have been taller. And maybe to your point, they've perhaps gotten a lot more opportunities so that they developed or got those AA chances prior to coming to me. And so when I look at the pool of goalies who are available, and at the junior level, you probably get 25 goalies contact you each year because there's only so many spots. So it's by far the most communicated group. So you have your pick of the litter. But generally mine have been quite tall because the majority of them have been tall. This past year, even though we didn't play any games, I had a tiny little goalie. And when I assess her skill, she's actually was more skilled than most of the other goalies I had in terms of her abilities. Now, if that just developed because she was so small and had to find more creative ways. But she definitely took a longer route to get to the AA and get to the junior level than some bigger, slightly less talented goalies. And I do see it a little bit on players. Now, generally, the parent coaches place a little bit more value on size, and maybe that's them not being as immersed in the female game and projecting what they watch with the Leafs or in the NHL game onto the female game. So I have had conversations. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to interject there that I would say that your and my era also had an interesting part in women's hockey in that Hockey Canada tended to pick the smaller players. So kind of, and by smaller, I mean with less girth, we'll say. And it actually led to numerous eating disorders amongst our generation of girls. And so I think that has gone from the female game. Would you say that, Kim?
Yeah, I think I still see a whole breadth of body types and
yeah,
having success. I think in the female game, and I took the Hockey Canada skills instructor course, I guess, the week after you took the goalie one. And so Gina was on there, they're chatting, and she kind of alluded to the fact that there is, quite a wide range of sizes and weights and all of that within the team. They're not necessarily looking for a specific anthropomorphic person. And I also think that, if you're a bigger player, there's an expectation that you're going to play like an Apsey. If you're, and so if you find a bigger player like Apsey with, elite level skill, it's like a rocket ship. Like if you're 6 feet tall and have elite level skill in women's hockey, like you just write your ticket, right? If you're 5 foot nothing with that elite level skill, you're not going to write that ticket quite as easily, maybe, unless you can put the puck in the net, right? So,
but you are going to write the ticket easier than you would in men's hockey.
I think so, yes. But again, I think, and to Gina's point, the skill level is now a lot more elite than when we played. And the difference maker from Gina's perspective, I mean, not you, Sammy. I don't know if I ever scored on you in a game, to be honest, but the skill level is way higher. But she said the hockey IQ is not. It does not match the skill level. And so perhaps a smaller player who has a better sense of the game, and to your point, Andrew, has to have a better sense of the game because she's smaller and is doing it because she can't just body someone off the puck. But Gina's assessment was players' ability to initiate contact and use their body effectively, irrespective of their size, is not good enough. So it's not even taught well enough, or it's not even being used to its advantage. And I chuckled when she said that, because I think that might have been my only advantage back when I played, was my willingness to do that. But it's not taught very much. It's not, and I think if in the female game we could teach that more, then you would see a reestablishment of bigger bodies having an advantage simply because of size and strength. But right now it's a very peripheral play on the outside game. So even if you're big like me, you're not using that to your advantage. So it was interesting to hear from Gina's perspective that is what they're seeing as well, and how that trickles down to the younger levels.
Kim and Sammy, and evaluation, Andrew, this is really sort of two answers, two concepts. When I was the head scout with the women's program, we would have to evaluate players to invite them to camp. And we developed a scouting process of identifying 7 traits, collating them, agreeing and identifying what the traits meant and what they were. And we would mathematically make selections for those camps based on that. It was called evaluation for development. The problem was coaches maybe tried to select teams where the bigger player, the most talented player at that young age, who was at maybe their peak of their development, didn't have the character to put in the 4 years between Olympics to get better. They were coaching to win, and they just shortened the bench. And so evaluation for development's important. Development's more important. What does it take? Are they coachable? Are they going to work hard and be attentive? Now, on goalie selection, this is a hilarious story, but it validates the precarious nature of selection. In Alberta, they have 8 zone teams, Andrew. for Barry's provincial camps. And the half the province drafts their teams. The coaching staffs learn to evaluate for development and draft their teams. The other half of the province does the same, picks 3 separate teams. So the kids can come from all over that half of the province. They're drafted. And I was mentoring one team, and we ended up the last pick of the day, the last goalie. And they were arguing about, my staff was arguing about 2 goalies. And I just said, flip a coin. Flip a coin. If you can't, it's just so subjective, you'd be just as accurate. Well, they did flip a coin. That goalie ended up being the better of our 2 goalies. That goalie also ended up playing for Team Alberta's provincial team in the Canada Winter Games and alternating games as they won the gold medal. She didn't play the final. But that's an example of, you select a player on the flip of a coin, or you select a player thinking, well, you really don't know.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to not prejudge to that degree that you don't let kids develop, players develop, and that's at any level. So I'm really glad we got to bring the girls in. Now, Andrew, you'd be interested in this from a hockey point of view. Hockey Canada has a Pond to Podium. If you go to their site and click on the Pond to Podium and register, go down to the female Pond to Podiums, it's a session. I've been listening, and I'm on my second, going through each speaker. I think there's 12 different presenters. Boy, am I behind the game in terms of what they're talking about. It's excellent stuff.
Yeah, I've listened to a few actually. Yep.
Yeah. So I recommend when I share this conversation with everybody to a large audience, hoping they'll do good for the game down the road. And I just wanted to put that plug in for Pond to Podium and listening to the speakers. They were excellent. Two speakers on goaltending. I learned a lot from both of those, and very impressed with Gina's leadership talk. But they were all great stuff. So I encourage everybody to get involved in that. So Andrew, you're going to move forward with this, and I'm going to give you all the help I can, and I will prepare, sort of edit some stuff and put it out. And if you email me anything that can help get it out. And
again, I look at this group as a preview group. I want you guys to have a preview to this before the launch, so I'll keep this group in mind as we get into that more thing. And if there are members who weren't here today that would be interested in reaching out, that's all it is. It's reach out. Let's have a discussion. Let's get you the answers to the questions you have, and explore whether there's an opportunity to investigate a fit, and then see what comes of it. I'm looking forward to that and really appreciate the opportunity here. So thankful that I have a good relationship with Paul and the opportunity to meet and chat with you, Wally, and meet the good guests that were on today, especially Sammy, who got me the link. So hats off to her.
Okay, well, we're going to stay on and BS a little bit here, and Tom and I will probably be the last 2 in the end. Is there any other topic that you wanted to mill over today? Now, Kim, you were going to send a link out about a session you were going to do with your group. Have you done that yet? You sent me an email.
I think I sent it to you by email. The recording of my my latest coach presentation for Leaside. I'm pretty sure I sent you the link. If not, I can resend it.
Yes, please do. Please do.
I'd be happy to. It's been very well received, the principle based coaching that we've started to implement. So it had great feedback from all the coaches, and also some constructive feedback in terms of the vocabulary. So people have been very forthcoming about sharing and making it the best possible version we can. So it's been great, Wally. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Kim, what's your organization?
Toronto Leaside Wildcats in Toronto. Yeah.
So, does the name Susan Banbury ring a bell? Susan Irving? Is it the girls?
Yes.
Oh no, it's there's a Leaside.
There's a Leaside boys hockey.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we have two separate organizations.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, just a contact I had there with Leaside, but there's the two separate. That's right. We were coming to your tournament the day COVID was.
I remember it well.
Yes. Oh my gosh, half the team was in Toronto and half the team was going down Friday.
Yeah, I did a coach evaluation the night before, and all the teams, because all our teams have to enter, with the exception of the junior team, because we don't provide that level, like that age group
division?
in the tournament.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I always go to the tournament. My kids enter all the draws to try to win stuff, and it's, I like just to go and watch. And yeah, that was the day.
That was
night,
my
all got shut down.
That was my little star. We were the novice division, and that age, everybody's excited, road trip, whatever. I think it was our second or third tournament. So, oh man. Well, maybe this year. Hey, fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great tournament, and great, great to be in downtown Toronto and have access to a bunch of different things and opportunities. So hopefully, everyone gets the chance to come this year.
Cool. Wally, I'm gonna have to run. I can see it boiling through the glass in the door here. I've got to manage a few children and a few things there, but this has been wonderful. Kim, such a pleasure to meet you. Tom, thanks for your stories, and I'll look forward to maybe dropping in and learning a little bit more. Hopefully, I can.
Anytime, join us anytime.
Will do. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye.
On the female side, I've got a guest coming on. She doesn't know it, but I'm going to invite her. Dr. Sil Corbett. Sil has a doctorate in neuroscience and training. She's just written a book. Just an excellent, easy read. She's an artist, a comedian, you name it. It's just a well-written book. And it's basically about mental health, human performance, and bringing in her academic background of neuroscience and her expertise as an elite athlete. I believe she was if not a marathoner, a cyclist. But she's, does a lot of private work training with athletes. She's was in Florida last week training with Daryl Belfry's daughter, getting ready for the Olympic camp. And Daryl's coming to Calgary this week for a week before the camp starts to do some private work with his daughter and I think 3 or 4 players that are from the Bobcat team that got invited to the Nationals. So Sil's going to be on, and Kim, I might reach out to you with Sil coming on. If she does, I'm going to twist her arm to do it. To get her on to talk about that one in particular, and I'm sure it'd be another really interesting topic. So hopefully, how did your holidays go, Kim? I saw the campsite pictures.
It was great. We went, we went just one night a couple of weeks back, and then we went for 5 days just last week, or I guess I can't even keep it all together. I've been interspersed with the Hockey Canada sessions in between. So I took the skills instructor course, which was I think there was 35 of us from across the country. And Corey McNabb ran that one. It was really great, like very detailed info, great presenters. And so Carolyn Ouellette was in that one. Nat Rivard, you would remember that name, Wally.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of us former players in that, so that was pretty neat. And then I'm also a group leader for HP1 here in Ontario. I've done that for about 10 years. So we had that first weekend virtually this past weekend. So the camping was kind of shoved right in between those two. So the rest of it's all been the Hockey Canada stuff. So which is fun. It's great to do, and I've always got a lot out of it, either as an attendee or as a group leader or presenter. So it's been interesting though. When you spoke about females, and the female participation is still, alarmingly low. Not as much on HP1. You do get a good amount. If there's 120 coaches taking the course, I think a third of them might be coaching in the female game, but there's only 8 female coaches out of 120, which is actually way more than we've had in the past. There was one year we had 1. And then me and Rachel Flanagan, I think, were the 2 presenters or group leaders. In the skills course, there might have been 7 or 8 of us that were female. So obviously a different, not bench coaches, but skills coaches. And I'm not saying it should be 50-50 or anything. I don't mean, I just, it's an interesting trend. And, and now the cool thing was, Wally, the women themselves are, they'll weigh in and they'll lean in and say, well, where's the representation? Why don't we have, more women here? Why aren't there more female presenters? And, in the past, I was the one banging the drum. Now a lot of them are saying, Kim, what's up with this? Like, why is there not more females involved? And also, on the issue of inclusivity, why are there not more BIPOC or LGBT or all that? So it's interesting to see people's appetite and interest in representation. And they had a hot stove with Tom Rennie the first night of HP1. I've heard Tom speak a million times, but this is the first time I saw him in a hot stove, and people were not holding back, Wally. They were hammering him with questions, and he did a great job with it. But it was great to see people. In the past, I think a lot of coaches would just sat there and go, "It's Tom Rennie. He's, and you might ask some, like, you might throw in some softies at him. People were throwing some hardballs at him, and I was really, happy to see them doing that, and happy to see the way he responded, because I think sometimes, in my experience, we just accept, whoever the authority is, or they say this is the way it's done or this is the way it's taught, and we don't question. So I'm really thrilled to see coaches questioning things and asking the hard questions. I think it's a great step forward in the game on both the male and the female side. But I'd love to have more females involved, obviously, but hopefully we can move in that direction in the future.
Listen, Kim, there's the Pond to Podium. Did you watch Vicky Bendis's Drylands training session?
I watched some of it. I didn't have the chance to watch all of it, but I did lean in a little bit on that. Did you watch that one?
I did. I watched it in its entirety yesterday, and to me it was mind blowing. And here's a recent former player, totally enthusiastic as a presenter, operating out of her living room with her cat walking around with different objects. And I just saw it as a really wonderful session. And everything she was doing, from my kinesiology background, appeared to be something that made absolute sense. So I'm curious about your take on that. Jessica Campbell did a thing on skating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you watched that, but I sent her an email after. It was just a wonderful session. But my question was mentioning stick length. So I sent her an email about it. How much will that affect the player moving forward? And wondering what her upbringing was in terms of her development of her skating on that. But Tom, I encourage you to tune in to the Pond to Podium. Tara Watchhorn's defensive skating. she did some things that resonated with me.
Where's it at?
Pond to Podium on Hockey Canada's website. If you go in the coaches column, there's maybe 7 circles across the top, and it's the second from the left, I believe. You click on it, click on Pond to Podium at the very bottom, type in all the information to access it, and you can choose any one of about 12 presentations. But the defensive skating and defensive play, her video examples, unbelievable, really unbelievable to me. And you know, I had I not watched those, I would have been speaking out inappropriately if Tom Reddy was on. But now I see the shift is being made. Some of the things that I've advocated that are fundamental are being emphasized, and I'm really pleased with that. All the presenters were great.
And then Wally, you know, it's not to interrupt, but this is where I think they were phenomenal. Jess was on the skills course. She was excellent. They did talk about, they got into like quite a bit of detail about, you know, skate fit and stick length, and like very, very detailed about blades and lies. Like it was, you know, the skills instructor is obviously, that course is meant for a very specific group, but it was nice to see the degree of detail. You know, the challenge I have, and I brought this up to our, the gentleman who runs HP1 here in Ontario through the OHF. Pond to Podium is great, and you know it's marketed as, you know, within the female game, and there's a lot of great female presenters. Yeah. My question, and again, this is pushing people's buttons, is why is that not for all of hockey? So if we go into HP1, you know, and you have, you know, why cannot a presenter from more presenters from the female game present on, you know, power play or skills? Or, you know, we had great presenters this past weekend. You know, Kim Thompson did the team building, and Adam Douglas did physical prep. I mean, we have people from Hockey Canada doing these presentations. I think that's fantastic. What I think needs to change in the mindset is the female game has a tremendous amount to teach the male game. Yeah. We do things differently. And I know I exclusively coach in the female game, but it is different. And the things we prioritize are different. And so in the same way, I might seek out someone from, you know, the male side, professional or minor, to learn from them. You know, I think we're doing a great disservice to the male side of the game by not having things like Pond to Podium be presented to people coaching in the male side. I just think there's so much to learn both ways. And traditionally, it's been taught, you know, the male game kind of goes to everybody, and then the females are in this corner doing their own little thing. And I would really love to see that continuum swing both ways. And that's, you know, sort of what I'm advocating for here in Ontario. It'll be an uphill climb, but you know, I think it's great. There's more out there for the females, and people like Vicky and Jess who are wonderful making those presentations. Yeah. But that should be the norm, and that should be, you know, for all aspects of the game. And I may be speaking out of turn. There's probably implications on the sledge and the para and all the other sides of the game that I haven't had the privilege of working with yet. So I would like to see it be more our game, everyone's game, as opposed to us in these silos by gender or by ability.
Well, I understand where you're coming from. And I think the advancement of the male game at the NHL, the X and O level, we still have to tap into that. But the emotional intelligence level and the fundamentals of teaching and respecting the progression of getting to the point of being able to execute and think the game that the men play, that's what the women can do. And that's what, when I looked at those presentations, that's what they were doing that the guys don't focus on and do. There's an assumption that, well, they have the skills to do that. So it gets down to doing Daryl Belfry like stuff, which is new and out of the comfort zone, but it's the methodology of engagement, questioning, and the knowing why. That side of the coaching will take both games to a higher level. And I think the female game has got much more to contribute on that side, on the emotional intelligence side, the coaching leadership side. I think we're totally dependent on the future is going to be dependent on the leadership of the female game. And I agree on the presentation piece. And I'm glad that people spoke up and confronted issues because years ago, you wouldn't dare say what you thought. And the essence of any successful program, whether it's Andrews and that, is going to be the trust and the respect behind the purpose of it. So I really appreciate that.
Well, Wally, I wanted to share one more thing from HP1. This was, I thought of you, and I have a great little group of coaches. I think I've got 7 or 8 coaches, all coaching midget AA in Ontario. And the first 2 presentations were mental prep and team building. And the Kim Thompson did the team building, and it was an excellent presentation. And I sort of weighed in with them and I said, listen, there's all the activities you can do that are team building. And then there's team culture, which I like to call team building team culture, and team building is like kind of the fun activities that you do to help reinforce team culture. But, I relayed, and I'm going to do a session with that group about the mission statement. And I really hammered home with them, with the age group they're coaching, aspirations of the players they're coaching, all wanting to make junior and university, and that how important it is in that type of environment to make sure that alignment is there. Not that it isn't as important in another age group as well, but when it becomes midget AA, and especially here in Ontario, it's all about getting on a junior team, getting that scholarship, right? Like that's a huge piece of the puzzle, and that can sometimes take away from the team identity. So, as they were putting together their yearly calendars that you have to do in HP1 as part of the assignment, I suggested strongly to all of them that establishing the mission statement and their values is the first and most important piece of their team building. And that seemed to really resonate with all of them, which was fantastic. But I really enjoyed your conversation with MJ, who I've known a very long time. And she used to work for me for 5 years, and she's wonderful. And, I will do my part to help you along. I'm going to do mission statement as well with all the Leaside coaches. And do you know Beth McCharles, Dr. Beth McCharles?
No, I don't.
She does, she does like coaching, team building, mental. She's going to the Hockey Canada camp with the U18 Next Generation team that they just announced a bunch of the rosters yesterday for the development and Next Generation team. So she's the sister of one of our coaches here at Leaside, and she does mission state. She calls them value statements, but she does value statements for organizations. So she and I are going to work together to make sure it's implemented with at least all our competitive coaches at the end of August, beginning of September. So I keep beating the drum for you, Wally. I know how important it is and how transformative it can be. So I'll do my little part here in Toronto and help people see how important it is for them too.
Now, I just wanted to mention, did you listen to the 4 coaches that were a panel that they each spoke? Troy, there was Howie Draper was on, and Corey Chevrier.
I didn't watch that one yet.
I would listen to it.
Awesome.
Just so you get a feel of where the people that are heading the big team in centralization are from. But listening to the U of A coach coaching the under 18 team from the Pandas Howie Draper is exactly, that's his whole talk was about that. You know, he didn't say mission, he just talked about their approach or success in Japan in the World Championship. Now, the most interesting thing, listen to that, and then go down and listen to Gina's leadership thing. 80% of it was all about Howie Draper, his approach, about the culture we're trying to talk about that you create. And the people confuse that with being, you know, sort of goody and not about winning, but it is about winning, and the results will happen. So good luck with you on that. And I'm gonna, you know, I'm still pushing it because it would be so easy for you to task them to do that exercise before they get credit. If we had it instituted as soon as they took coach certification and they were doing the exercise or discussing how the exercise worked or how it could be done better at every level of certification. Can you imagine having a focus driven, principle driven group of coaches doing that? So hopefully it'll all work out in the long run, Kim. And thanks very much for your time. And where are the girls? They haven't come in to interrupt you today. Are they locked out?
No, they're not. My daughter was in here earlier. I had a call before we started, and she's quite the little athlete. So she was flipping around on one of my pieces of workout equipment and smashed her head. So I think she's scared to come back in here today. But yeah, they're downstairs with my son and my husband and causing chaos, enjoying the summer.
I got a funny story to share with you.
Yeah.
You leave. I heard last night when I'm playing. So a couple of guys that played in the show or play with us. So one of the guys asked, well, did you guys have a curfew? And I said, yeah, usually about 11 o'clock. And I said, did the coach always check? They said sometime. And then one of the guys said, yeah, one time the coach, what he did, he didn't like being up late at night. So he paid a really good looking girl to have one of those little souvenir sticks and said, if you see players coming in after 11, would you have them autograph this stick? So she did that and then gave it to the coach next day, left at the desk of the coach. And then they got a $500 fine for being past curfew.
Very creative.
So I thought that was a good little trick.
That
Kim,
is
have
pretty.
you had overnight road trips with your junior teams? Or
Yes.
just you have,
Yep.
eh?
Absolutely.
Did you run into any problems in terms of curfew or in terms of girls switching roommates and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I've always used those road trips as learning opportunities. So usually on the first road trip, I'm pretty we're quite enforceful of all the expectations, be in the room at this time, all this. And either myself or my assistants, because we're all female, can go and do the checking. And then the second road trip, I just tell them the rules and I don't check. And inevitably they break them. And then we don't play well the next day. And that I'm okay with because that's the learning, right? So part of it is for me, you go, okay, like I don't want to stay up till 11:30 and whatever. Check, it's part of my job, or I can get one of my assistants to do it. But at some point on one of the trips, I let them fall on their own sword. And I know they will, even if it's just a couple players. But if you give them an inch, they take the mile. So I'm okay with taking the loss or having a really bad first period the next game to be able to have that teachable moment. Because quite honestly, most of my players are 16, 17, 18 years old. Like, they should be able to follow that rule. They understand what I'm saying. They have their phones. They can set alarms, And so I'm in trying to prepare them for when they play for Tom or college hockey. Like, your coach shouldn't have to micromanage you at that level. And so I like to have them have that experience of staying up till 3 a.m. and thinking they're sneaking something over on me. And then they realize, oh man, we're kind of bad the next day when that happens. So it is always an interesting game when I don't when I take the leash off per se. But I make sure to have one overnight where I don't police it, and then they, like I said, I've never had anyone be perfect. Someone always, takes the liberties. But I love that as a teachable moment, and so I'm okay with the ramifications of not over policing it. And I think as coaches, we have too many rules sometimes, and it is a disservice to us. For example, if some coaches will say, if you're late, you miss the first 5 minutes of the game, or if this happens, you miss the first 10 minutes of the game, or you sit to the first period. And I remember having a game when I coached midget where when I still had these rules, and I was like, okay, someone missed practice, so she's out for this. And then these 3 kids were late for the warm up, so they missed this. And then this kid, got suspended. And I just found myself standing on the bench going like, what the heck am I doing? Like I got a clock and I'm okay, you're in and you're in and you're in. And then, it became far too much of the accountability and ownership and responsibility was falling on me. Right. And I was overburdened and overloaded. When in reality, they had to learn on their own. And so that took me at least, 5 to 8 years to really let go of the reins. But then, of course, the positive is when they go to university hockey, they have learned those skills. And so they are ahead of the curve of perhaps some of their college and university teammates because of the ownership and responsibility they had to take when they were at our level. So, that's always been my approach, Wally. And sometimes my assistant coaches look at me crazy. Like you can hear them at 2:00 running up and down the hallway, and they're like, "Aren't you going to go yell at them?" I'm like, "Oh no. Let's see how they do tomorrow." And it's kind of fun.
I just want to interject and just say it's been a different recruiting year. I think because the universities didn't count this as a year of eligibility. So a lot of 5th years are going back. So there's not that many spots as compared to other years. Mm-hmm. So I've ended up getting the tops who I wouldn't usually get. Like the top scorer in British Columbia, more than a goal a game. And another girl similar to her, I looked at, the score sheet of the game the 2 teams played each other. They scored all the goals. And so it's a little bit of a different dynamic that, there's more players out there, high quality players aren't signed by the, they want to go U Sport or NCAA before they come to our league generally, unless we have a program they really want. But most girls don't know anything about technical schools. So, but
that's great.
I
think it's interesting. Like a lot of the players have said, now they're university coaches are, they're going into a university where normally there'd be 25 on the roster. Now there's 34, right? Or, you hear of coaches asking players to do an extra year or stay back or these sorts of things. I don't envy the coaches at all who have to deal with those numbers, but often there's a great benefit to some other coaches. It's no different than when they allowed players to transfer back from the NCAA without any penalty. And all of a sudden you saw the level of U Sport, especially here in Ontario, went up, quite quickly as you got 2 or 3 players on each team who were Division I and came back for whatever reason. So I have a player, I think, who's at Harvard, and they've got 34 players, and normally they carry 22. And the Ivy Leagues tend not to have terribly large rosters. And it will be interesting to see how coaches deal with that. But quite a few of my former players are doing master's degrees and attending different universities to play. So they'll have 1 year at a new university after playing 4 at a previous university. And I think that'll be really interesting from a team building dynamic. And, a lot of them are sort of all-stars who are moving around. So it'll be cool to see. But I got to jump off, guys. It was great to chat. I won't be on the next couple of weeks, Wally, to your point about having, what was her name again?
Sil Corbett, Dr. Sil Corbett.
Yeah, I've got hockey camp craziness the next couple of weeks because I'm on the ice for 8 hours a day. But I'll be back the first week of August. So not that I want to dictate your curriculum in any way, shape, or form, but I would love to be on when Sil is on if I could. But I'll be I'll be living at the hockey rink for the next 2 weeks.
Well, I'm not sure whether she'll be able to be on sooner than later, but I'll keep her in mind and I'll keep you in mind. I'll make sure you are available when she's on. I'm looking to, I'm thinking of Lisa, Haley, and a lot of the female people. I may throw it out to the female coaches about her being on and encouraging them to join.
That'd be great. I'd love to see it. I got to run. I got another call.
Okay, you take care.
Take care, Kim.
Tom, did you have any issues with curfew?